Okay, hello and welcome, Toasty. I'm delighted you're going to be joining me today and excited to get into some questions. This is the Overwatch interview channel. And Toasty, could you please introduce yourself to the viewers who may not know who you are?
Hey folks, I'm Toasty. I'm a play-by-play caster, sort of working around the tier 3, tier 2 sort of edges of the scene, and I'm super excited to be here, honestly. First sort of interview I've had like this, so I'm super hyped, honestly.
Great to hear, great to hear. Okay, so before we actually get into the interview here, I need to know one thing, and that is who is your main?
This question had to come at some point. I'm a main. I gotta admit.
No way.
It's...
Okay,
I
okay.
know, I
We'll just
know.
we'll just end it here. It's fine. It's been a
Yeah,
pleasure.
okay. Yeah. All right,
Okay,
see you
so
folks.
so my follow up is usually any
Oh.
balance changes you need, but I think what is a more appropriate question here for May is there any nerfs you think she needs right now?
Honestly, not really. I don't think there's any change you need to May. I think May is perfect as she is. May is incredible. I love May. And it makes people suffer as well. Your own team, particularly. So it's even funny.
I really can't say much. I'm a Doomfist main and I make no friends on the matter.
Oh
Team
no.
enemies, nobody likes me. So I
Yeah.
think we're in that same boat there. Okay, so as a caster then, can you tell me about some of the most recent work that you've done?
Yeah, so recently, it's actually funny, I've been taking a little bit of a back seat from it. So I'm a college student, obviously, so that's sort of taken over my life a little bit. I also got a day job recently, so that's also been taking a lot of time, but recently, I've been doing a lot of like stuff with just generic sort of tier 3 level, maybe tier 4 orgs. Sort of like your BPLs, your Tranquilities, that sort of thing. Just doing some general casting for some of their games, that sort of thing. I've been doing a lot with the Bad Mario League B League, which is actually how you found me, I believe,
It
right?
is indeed, yes.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure watching you on that now, I have to say, and I have a bit of skin in the game, so that does help, to be fair. So how did you get into casting then in the first place?
Oh, started December 2019, something like that. It was a while back. I was 15 at the time, I think. Quite a young start, I've been
Yeah.
told, into esports, and really it came about because I was like, I'll doss around. I'll have a bit of a cast of just some Overwatch League VODs with some mates, and I was like, yeah, that'd be funny. And then I found myself really enjoying it and actually taking it seriously, and like my friends were like, "Yo, why are you taking this seriously?" And I'm like, "Yo, it's cool, man. It's cool. It's sick. It's being able to present in front of like an audience and entertain, and it really grew on me as the years went on. And obviously, a bit of a slow start to it, right? 15, not really going to get many gigs, but yeah, that's how it really started, and it just grew from there, I suppose.
But I think it's great coming from such a young age that you accept that you're not going to get too much starting off, but when you hit that age, 2019, you're roughly about 18, 19 now. Am I right?
I'm about 18, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So you're at that age now where you have 3 years experience against a lot of people the same age as
yeah.
you, which is a really nice benefit to have in that as well. So when it comes to getting ready for a cast, I know you're going to be casting later on today. Do you have a rhythm? Like, how do you get into this rhythm? Is there a ritual or a pre-game routine that you have?
A lot of casters will advise you to do 10 to 15 minutes of vocal warm-ups. A lot of casters will advise you to read a Wikipedia page in a caster voice, right? Like, there's a lot of methods for it. For me, for a cast, I will sit here. There's a song called Alphabet Aerobics.
Mac
I
Lethal?
don't know who it's by. Sorry?
Is that Mac Lethal? No, or I might be
Alphabet
getting
Aerobics.
confused.
I'm googling it now. It's by Black Alicious.
Okay.
And basically it's really lyrical and it's really what's the word, like it's hard to like rap it basically.
Yeah.
So I put that at 1.5 times speed and I just rap that. I just rap it, and then
1.5.
that gets me prepared. Yeah, and it is so fast when it's on 1.5,
Wow.
and I
Okay.
just do that a couple times. Boom, all done.
Oh, that's mad. Okay, that's a really interesting ritual or kind of. I mean,
Yeah.
look, if it works, it works. That's really good. So that I think is definitely something that's more catered towards the play-by-play. Your color
Oh yeah.
casters not really going to have that issue. So, could you explain just in a little bit more detail some of the differences then between a play-by-play and a color caster?
A lot of people, I think, will sort of boil it down to play-by-play is fast-paced, color is slow-paced, play-by-play is action, color is analytical. That's sort of like the main divide you'll see, right? I think there's a little bit more to it than that. I think there is a little bit of an essence of like a stylistic difference in terms of how you're speaking, how you want to present your sentences, even. Right, like in terms of the cadence, that sort of thing. There's a lot to it, I feel like, and there's a lot of different styles for both sort of roles of casting. I've had color casters that are really hype and focus on big moments. I've had color casters that are super analytical and let me sort of take a little bit of a laid-back approach to play-by-play casting. It really depends on duo, but I think the main difference is that divide that we're talking about, like the analytical versus sort of fast-paced action.
Okay, so just thinking about those duos that you had, is there anyone in particular you really enjoyed working with in the past?
Oh, there's a few. I hate singling people out as like duos I love working with because it feels sort of disingenuous to like say them and not everyone else that I cast with.
Of course.
But there's a few duos I feel like that have stuck with me, right? A lot of my tier 2 or like high tier 3 work has been with Jace, who is also a BPL caster that I met through BPL. We did some of the Mayhem events together. We did some questline stuff together. So generally, you know, that's I think Jace is my like biggest caster duo. There's just a ton of others though. I mean, there's countless. Someone that I work with a lot through an org called Altiora is User Intel. I haven't casted with User Intel much, but they are incredible at what they do. And actually, I do color with User Intel, which is quite a stark contrast to usual. But it's another caster duo that I think really takes me out of my comfort zone, but in like in a good way, you know.
And how do you find that transition then from play by play to color? I assume you prefer the play by play, do you?
Definitely.
Okay.
It's what I'm more comfortable on. It's what I've been practiced on for, like I say, three-ish years, right? I mean, as of like December right now, yeah, pretty much 3 years. But color is quite a nice change of pace. It's nice to let someone else take the mantle of the play-by-play to really hype things up. And I've been told my color style is a lot more like I'm very narrative with it. I'm not analytical by any means because I'm not specializing in that. But I'm a lot more narrative. I bring in a lot of like narrative hooks, storylines, that sort of thing, and that's where I sort of take my approach with color. So it is quite a nice breath of fresh air, I feel.
Interesting. Okay. If you can cast your mind back over the last 3 years, then do you have any favorite moments from games you've casted?
Oh, it's really hard because I've done so many, and I don't wanna, boost my own ego here, but I've done so much stuff that I just can't think of anything specific. A lot of my best moments, though, have been with BPL and with
Okay.
Florida Mayhem, which are sort of the two orgs I've worked with, I feel like, the most over the past few years, along with some other tier 4 orgs. But some of my best moments have come from those places, BPL, Florida Mayhem. There's also an org that sort of isn't too mainstream, too relevant, called Incognito, or now is rebranded to Astro. I don't think anyone here will probably know them or have heard of them, but I got my roots in casting there, and a lot of my memories come from starting there and sort of organizing all their streams and casting them. And a lot of moments I feel like tend to be like finals moments, like
Yeah.
finals, grand final scenarios where it's like that final rush of a team fight, the overtime, everything's chaotic. Those are the moments that really get me going.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, looking back then at Overwatch 1, do you think it's more enjoyable to cast Overwatch 1 or 2? Is there a difference?
You're asking hard questions, I'm telling you. It's hard to say because Overwatch 1 as a play-by-play, there's a lot more, I guess, and this is probably going to get a lot of controversial sort of ums and ahs, but there's a lot more depth, I feel like, to Overwatch 1, where there's tank synergy to think of, there's 6 players to think about,
Yeah.
ult economy is a little bit more complex, right? And it's a lot more complex, but it also gives you a lot more to, like, really play off of and talk about. Overwatch 2 is a lot more straightforward, right? Team
Yeah.
fights are quicker, color segments are shorter, it's a lot more snappy, it's usually 1 or 2 ult fights. So it's a lot more, it feels a lot more repetitive, honestly, to cast, but that's because I think I and many others, I would assume, aren't quite used to the pacing yet,
Yeah.
which I find is a thing with a lot of casters as well.
Okay. An even harder question to follow up from that then. Do you think it was more enjoyable overall then for players as a product if you were to compare the two games? Do you think we're going in the right direction or Maybe not.
If you ask DPS players, they think we're going in the right direction. If you ask tank and support, they don't. Supports have a horrible time in Overwatch 2. This is a fact. DPS players have a great time in Overwatch 2. This is a fact. Tank players lose their off tank.
Yeah.
So that is what it is. At the end of the day.
Okay. I want to go big picture then, just while we're somewhat on this topic. So, from your point of view as a caster, what are some things in the competitive scene that you think need to be addressed?
Some things in the competitive scene, definitely Blizzard's handling of tier 2. It's something that's sort of it's dear to the heart of many casters, players, managers, coaches, production staff, tourney organizers, right? Like everyone, I think, would agree that Blizzard's handling of tier 2 in sort of professional Overwatch, the competitive scene, is not great. I mean, there was obviously that whole contenders strike stuff quite a while back.
Yeah.
Now, and that was a big thing. That was, I think, where everyone started to realize, there are some big issues with how tier 2 is ran, and that's it's no discredit to anyone running it. It's Blizzard that are controlling a lot of the actions, for example, and there are a lot of factors that go into running sort of contenders, tier 2 events, that sort of thing, even Open Division, right? Everyone was like making memes about how top 32 Open Division would go into contenders. And that was a terrible decision from Blizzard like a while back when Overwatch 2 was in beta. But overall, like, support tier 2, I think is what I would say to sort of fix that, right? You've really got to put more resources in. I mean, you can't have, and this is a recent thing, the streamer tournaments, right? With, a bunch of GMs against a bunch of plats plus Kefri. And that has a bigger prize pool than some contenders tournaments, right?
Yeah.
Professional play is getting less love than content. And that feels like it's a little bit disingenuous to the die-hard fans, die-hard professionals playing the game.
Yeah, and I think on that, we're hearing a lot of reports, even going up as far as tier 1, of a lot of teams going budget. A mix of factors then, things like the trouble in China,
Yeah.
general just kind of, what'd you say, monetary problems. I think this is something that, just to kind of divulge here a little bit, I think this is something that's going to be an issue in tier 2. Like, we might struggle to get more up-to-date talent, as a lot of these kind of free agents look to find homes in tier 2. Maybe it's good for the scene. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think veterans dropping to tier 2, is it good for the scene, or do you think it's better if we're promoting more, say, from tier 3 up? Sorry about that. We're having a bit of technical issues again. So the question at hand here was, we're hearing reports, of tier 1 teams starting to go budget.
Yeah.
And I think this we'll say, feed into tier 2 teams then picking up some of these veteran tier 1 players that didn't make it into the Overwatch League, as opposed to picking up these new tier 3 rookies coming up. Do you think something like that will be good for the scene, or do you think it might be a detriment?
It's hard to say. We've had examples in tier 2 of new talent coming in. For example, like I said, with that influx of sort of top 32 OD, we had a lot of new talent come in sort of B-sides, A-sides, and it was really good for the scene. It was a breath of fresh air, right? Having some new names around that are really hyped. And it allows for more turnover from tier 2 into tier 1 as well, right? You've had a lot of rookies, like, for example, Proper, going up to Overwatch League and absolutely stomping everyone. And I feel like having new names, new talent, stuff like that going into the scene, I think is good. There's so many examples of it, of course, in the tier 1 scene, but in tier 2 as well. Obviously, I'm not too involved in tier 2 and that sort of thing. It's not my, I guess, specialty right now, but it is. I think it is a good thing to have new talent coming in rather than have veterans stick around, because you want the game to grow. You want the game to have more appeal in terms of bringing new players, new competitive players in. There's a couple of situations like that in Overwatch League that have happened, right? With Ons being a ladder player drafted to Overwatch League, right? It's there's some situations where having the new blood talent come in is really good, and I think sticking to veterans, not a great decision.
Okay, yeah, I think that's valid enough there. The counter argument there is that seeing these big names in tier 2 would, for example, Hadi, I think, is playing in the Saudi E League at the moment. I think it's Saudi League. I could be wrong there. But seeing names like that come into tier 2 maybe it gives it a boost, but I think for long term goals, I think you're right in saying new and upcoming talent is probably the way to go with it.
Yeah.
Okay, circling back here then. What advice do you wish someone had given you when you first started casting?
Yeah, so we're back to cast and stuff here. It's I definitely think it's there's two, I think. Number one, don't ramble, because I've been doing a bit in this interview, I'll be honest, but you got to communicate your point quickly and effectively, and something a lot of new, and obviously I've done a lot of work with colorcasters, something a lot of new colorcasters will do is ramble, the points will go into the team fight, and then boom, the play-by-play doesn't have a great hook to pick up from the co-caster, right? No good handoff to pick up from the color caster. And the same can be said for play-by-plays that cut into the color segment a bit too much. So not rambling, having a succinct sort of way of speaking and getting your point across, I think is really important. Second piece of advice, networking. Marketing, right?
Yeah.
Like, as a caster, you are a brand. You are a person, but you're also a brand. And you really have to present yourself that way. You see some casters on Twitter, obviously being down bad on Twitter, for example, as like a meme and that sort of thing. We're not talking marketing in that sort of sense. We're talking marketing in terms of what can you provide to a broadcast? What can you really give that other people can't? In my case, it's young blood experience. It's the youth. It's the fact that I got into esports at such a young age and learned some very important lessons. That's what I can bring. And lots of casters need to have that unique selling point, I feel like, in terms of how they market themselves, especially in resumes, reels, that sort of thing.
Brilliant. So on that then, marketing, looking towards the future, what are your goals in the next couple of years?
Couple of years wise, I mean, it's going to be harder this next year, at the very least, to really progress in casting, I feel. Mainly because, like I said, college, I got final exams for sort of college A levels coming up. So, like, talking maybe next year or so, I'm probably not going to progress much. But bringing, I think after that, a sort of resurgence into the scene with, like, getting into the UK university scene, I think it's something I want to do quite a fair bit. I was selected for Null quite a while ago, winter 2020, I want to say, 2021. And, stuff like that, UK university scene, really cool. I want to get into that a lot more. I also want to break into the tier 2 scene. I have that, and this again is me sort of egoing myself up a little bit here. I have that potential. Haven't quite sort of culminated it yet, right? But I have that potential to get to a tier 2 sort of level. And long term, 2-3 years down the line, I want to be where people like, for example, a couple of people I look up to, Bullskunk, Chef Billy, Lafon, Plausible, right? People like them, I really want to be where they are right now in a couple of years' time, especially when I've got a couple more years under my belt, a bit more maturity, right? A lot of people will feel a little bit uncomfortable with getting sort of a young 17, 18-year-old caster on their sort of show, so...
Yeah, look, it is one of the big challenges. When someone is young,
Yeah.
it's tough. But I think you have a lot of experience under your belt at that age. I think is a really shining light for you as well. Just as a
Yeah.
side note, you mentioned a couple of names there. Is there any one in particular that you're absolutely dying to cast with?
If you asked me a year ago, or maybe might be more than a year ago now, I would have said hexagrams. Hexagrams was like my biggest inspiration for casting for like the longest time. The guy was going to give me a casting VOD review, and it got postponed too many times, so that was a bit of a shame.
Unfortunate.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, well, it was unfortunate to be fair, but big inspiration for me was hexagrams. I think it shifted more towards, I think, leg day is my sort of inspiration. That's weird, right? Leg day, color, me, play-by-play. But leg day as an inspiration in sort of that tier 1 scene, right? If I can get there one day, like that'd be incredible, because I'll be standing where leg day was. But he's just a massive inspiration to me in terms of obviously not being an American caster, because there's a lot of those to go around. But it is hard for us Brits, it is hard. It's quite an inspiration for me.
Yeah. Okay, on that kind of similar vein then, is there any players in the scene that you would love to, have the chance to cast? I suppose an easier way of saying this is there any teams in particular that you'd be excited to cast?
I mean, other than the tier 2 teams I've already casted, right? Uprising Academy, Nyx, Altiora, right? Those are teams that I've casted already, and I had a blast casting those. Would love to cast them again. But as far as sort of future, obviously this is like if I ever get to tier 1, which is, God, that's a long way away, but if London Spitfire is still London Spitfire by then, they'd be a sick team to cast. If Hardy is still around in the
Yeah,
scene by
okay,
then,
fair.
Hardy would be sick to cast. But tier 2 wise, I've really wanted to cast Yazan, Yazan SA, right? Seems like a really interesting person to cast the gameplay of, and puts a nice spin on the game with sort of the fire echo tendencies, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's something maybe a little bit away from the mold that we're seeing with the current meta as well. Of course, will be
Yeah.
interesting to cast. Toast, any final words for the viewers before I let you go?
Not really. I mean, it's been an absolute blast being here. I'm glad, anyone who watched, right? Seeing
too.
me just ramble for 30-ish minutes, and thank you, Mossy, for having me on. It's been absolutely great. I love talking about this kind of stuff. It's really nice to really get my thoughts and feelings out there in terms of casting, because there's no real channels for that other than Twitter. And listen, Twitter is for memes and
Yeah,
stuff like that, not for
not much more.
heartfelt casting related posts. So
So, if anyone wants to check you out in the future, where can they go?
well, you can see it under my name here, I believe, just on the screen, at ToastConButter. That'll be my Twitter. That's where I do most of my sort of tweeting and can I swear?
Yeah, you can swear once or
Shit,
twice.
shit posting. Yeah, I do a lot of shit posting on my Twitter. So you can see me there if you're really interested. And obviously, in future as well, you might just see me floating around the scene, which should be super cool. Just watching a cast, adding a viewer to that number count, or even dropping a message in chat. Like, if anyone recognizes me, that is like, it's amazing. So you can find me anywhere. Most sort of like tier 4, tier 3 orgs. So yeah,
Awesome. Toast, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on. And thank you to all the viewers who are watching. I'll be back next week with another interview. Take care.